elementary campus. So I do have a handout that I posted, and it's more kind of like a summary of what I'm presenting. It's not something really that you need to have access to while we're going through the presentation. But we'll go ahead and get started with this Prezi. And I decided to start with a poem that I wanted to share. And as soon as it's loading. All right. This may look familiar to some of you. It came from one of our textbooks, but I thought it really fit this purpose. It's called Banned by Julie Larios. And I liked how part of the poem was in italics. The part that people are telling this person to stop doing something, that they shouldn't be doing something, even though they really want to. And by the end, they can't. This kind of reminded me that we cannot and should not take certain freedoms and rights for granted, and that if we don't speak up when we have the chance, then sometimes we reach a point where we can no longer speak out at all. And it reminded me also, I think it was Joni Mitchell in one of her songs where the lyric says, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone." That's kind of the way I look at banned books and that whole process. So today I really just wanted to kind of focus on intellectual freedom, censorship, and the prospect of book banning in a library setting. So, you know, all students and library patrons have the right to choose, read, and view information, and that right is afforded to everyone through the U.S. Constitution under the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights. However, you know, there are well-intentioned people who are typically parents who seek to shelter or protect their children from material that they deem harmful or inappropriate. So these good intentions can often lead to censorship, and then certain materials can no longer be accessible or banned. And I had several that I wanted to kind of share with you that were a little bit surprising to me, and I wanted to see if maybe you could guess why these particular books were banned here in the beginning. So Where the Wild Things Are, Maurice Sendak. I remember reading this as a child, loved it. Any idea why someone would think this book is inappropriate?
Possibly it was too scary.
True. Yep, they thought it was dark, frightening, that it might traumatize children. Also, they said that Max was disrespectful, and that you know, a child should not be speaking to adults in the way that he did. Okay, what about Harriet the Spy? Thoughts on this one? No?
I don't know, because that's such a, I loved that book growing up.
They said that Harriet was a bad influence, that her honesty was too brutal, and that it hurt the other children's feelings. So they wanted to ban that one. How about the dictionary?
Well, obviously there's inappropriate words in there.
Exactly, especially slang and lots of definitions of words that probably adults looked up prior to having internet access. Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Another one of my favorites. Thoughts?
No idea.
There were actually police departments who were unhappy that the pig characters were police officers, and they thought that was very derogatory. So they requested that the book be removed. The Lorax. Uses the word stupid, which all of us who have taught before know that in some households that's a bad word. And people who work in the logging industry were also offended by the way that deforestation was depicted in this book. And here's another one for you, Charlotte's Web. I really tried to choose books that I thought that would be present in an elementary library, things that we might actually be faced with as far as book challenges. Any ideas on this one?
The only thing I can think of is maybe the little relationship she gets into for such a young kid, but the boy, other than that, no.
How about
Religious groups were very, I guess, upset with the fact that animals were talking, and they thought that only people should be able to have that ability, and that it elevated animals to more of a human status, which was morally wrong for them. And here's the last one. Brown Bear, Brown Bear. Now, I personally could think of nothing that would be offensive in Brown Bear, Brown Bear. But it was a case of mistaken identity. They thought that Bill Martin Jr. was a different Bill Martin Jr. who had Marxist leanings and wanted to ban the book as a result. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and take you to a Padlet. If you have a QR reader, you can scan my QR code, or you can go to the website that I have there. I tried, there was another, oh gosh, there was another app that you can use that makes it a little shorter, but I couldn't remember what it was called. So if you have a QR code reader available, you can access it that way. If not, you can type in that information. And I'm going to give you a minute to do that and just kind of share a little bit more. Once you get to that Padlet, what I'd like us to do first is, maybe you've heard of some titles that were questioned or banned, and some reasons for those. So if you get there before everyone else, if you want to add some of that information for me. And I read recently and saw an interview with Judy Blume, who was quoted as saying, that she's always tried as an author to write about issues or topics that kids deal with on a daily basis. And I think it's probably not surprising that she has had some of her titles banned over the years. As teachers and educators, we don't always know what our students' lives are like at home or at school. And I think that books can help students cope with so many different issues, whether it's divorce or death or anger or dealing with blended families, homelessness, gender identity, any of those types of things, and that our students need to really see themselves and their experiences reflected in the books that we provide to them in our library to help them make sense of their world. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move to the Padlet unless you need me to stay here. Does anyone need me to stay? I can come back to it if we need to. Oh, whoops, wait a sec. Here. All right. Did it work? Ah, yay. Yeah, Winnie the Pooh was also one. That's true. Right, the talking animals was a reason. There were so many, and I tried to choose some that I thought might be kind of surprising, maybe with some reasons that we might not have thought about. Where's Waldo actually was even one that was banned due to I think a topless sunbather in one of the tiny little minuscule pictures that you see. While we're here, can you think of any reasons maybe why parents or people in the community would want to ban books? I mean, what are some reasons, other than some that we've already discussed, maybe that would cause someone to say, no one should be able to read this book? Language, right? Being afraid of what their children might see or read or learn about. They're all true. That's right, religious beliefs. I know Harry Potter was a big one because of that. Especially, people not wanting their children to emulate witches or pretend that they may be part of that wizarding world. Just different beliefs. That's true as well. Okay, we're going to come back to our Padlet. Yep, sexual situations. That's a big one. Drugs, alcohol, all of those things that corrupt children. I'm going to go ahead and let's see. We'll come back to that in a moment. So if you just leave that browser open for me, that would be great. All right. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about intellectual freedom and how students' rights might be affected in the classroom by this concept, especially at the elementary level. So the American Library Association defines intellectual freedom this way, that it's the right of every individual to seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction. It provides for free access to all expressions of ideas through which any and all sides of a question, cause, or movement may be explored. Because our students are so young, this issue can be a little tricky. As teachers, we take on the role of a parent legally through in loco parentis, and we're expected to act accordingly like a parent might. And that is why we choose materials so carefully in a library, especially in elementary one, and make sure that our curriculum is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate for our students. And we have, even filters on internet connections at school, and we avoid things that might be deemed obscene or pornographic just for those purposes. The ALA also has a statement about minors, and since we're at an elementary campus, I thought this was appropriate. It says they cannot be denied their First Amendment rights due to their age. And there was a court case that was upheld by the Supreme Court to validate that thought. The ALA also has created or developed a Library Bill of Rights that includes 6 tenets, and I'm just going to briefly go over those with you just real quickly. It's recommended that all libraries have the Library Bill of Rights on hand just to help kind of explain how I guess the library subscribes to this thought. The first one just basically says that materials need to be made accessible to all people and that they shouldn't be excluded based on some of these ideas or notions that we talked about on the Padlet, just because our view might be different than someone else's, or an author's background should not preclude them from having their book in the library. The second one talks to current information, historical information, and that it shouldn't be chosen or eliminated from a collection due to political reasons or partisan approval. The third one addresses censorship and says that libraries need to recognize and challenge it when we see it. The fourth one says that libraries should seek the help of organizations or groups that advocate for individual patrons' rights. And the ALA definitely does that. I have some links on my handout that can take you to some great information about censorship from the ALA. The fifth one basically says that individuals cannot be denied the right to use the library because of their background or age, their views, that the library should be an open place for everyone to seek information, gather information, share information. Which brings us to the last one, and just making sure that library spaces are available for everyone to meet or gather, and that, again, affiliations or beliefs shouldn't be a prerequisite for using that library space. So in order to recognize and avoid censorship, as the tenant said in the Library Bill of Rights. We have to kind of avoid pitfalls, and we need to define what exactly is censorship. And the ALA, again, says that censorship is the suppression of ideas and information that certain persons, individuals, groups, or government officials find objectionable or dangerous. Censors pressure public institutions like libraries to suppress and remove from public access information they judge inappropriate or dangerous so that no one else has the chance to read or view the material and make up their own minds about it. The censor wants to prejudge materials for everyone. Students' rights were supported by the Supreme Court, again, in this landmark 1982 case, Board of Education versus PICO, where a student sued the school district because books were removed by board members who decided that they were inappropriate, and actually went into the high school library overnight and removed books. And the verdict from the Supreme Court was that a Board of Education cannot restrict availability simply because they disagree with the content or the ideas contained within those books, which kind of sets the stage for procedures to be put in place for handling book challenges in a legal way, and brings us again to why are books challenged? Why do people want certain books removed? What do they find objectionable? And here again is another clip art that the ALA has put out about just different topics, and we covered some of these in our Padlet. Offensive language, sexually explicit information, violence, political viewpoints, religious viewpoints, all of those kinds of things. You can see the larger words are the ones that are present more often. But again, as I said, the books and materials that are available to our students were carefully chosen through a selection process, and this is basically what the district provides for us. Professional journal reviews provide information about content and possible objectionable material, and that helps in selecting materials for the library. When I meet with you during grade level planning and take input from staff members regarding what you need to support your curricular standards and objectives, that goes into the selection policy. And again, students have a say in what they want to read and provide titles to the library that can be added to a book order. It's important that information is accessible intellectually, physically, and culturally for our students, and that all of us need to advocate for their right to be able to choose and read and view information. And to remember that what's relevant and appropriate for one student may not be relevant and appropriate for another. Their situations are diverse, and we need a collection that reflects that. The district policy states that parents have a right to decide for their minor children what they should read. If a parent sends a book back to school that they believe is inappropriate for their student, we need to be understanding and help the student make a different selection. We can stress to parents that if they want their children to avoid certain topics or types of books, they can make their wishes clear to their children. That is their right as a parent, just as it is our obligation to have materials available that meet the needs of the entire school community. We have to take everyone into consideration. If a parent, guardian, or community member decides to go a step further, though, and asks for the material to be removed from the classroom or from our library, I've included some recommended procedures for you to follow. These are the steps that you might want to take for a possible book challenge. The first thing is just to listen to their objection. What is it that they found in this book that they were unhappy with? Please refer them to me. I can further answer questions. I can explain why this book is part of our collection. If that does not appease the person making the objection, then a district challenge form can be provided for them where they can make a formal challenge to this book. And if it's completed and turned back in, then the book in question becomes reviewed by the Materials Review Committee, which meets, discusses the objectionable material, the book's merits, and makes a recommendation. And then those results are shared with all the appropriate parties. The most important thing for us to remember is that we must follow district policy, and the steps that I outlined are on the handout for you. Most people who challenge a book really don't normally fill out the formal complaint. They just kind of want to make their opinions known, but we do need to know what to do in case it happens. Every year, over 250 challenges are documented by the ALA, and over 85% of book challenges are never reported. Our policies are in place to help us defend our selection choices and to ensure access to materials for all students. The handout, like I said, also has some helpful websites that assist with both intellectual freedom and censorship. And I may ask some of you to serve on a selection or review committee, and that body will uphold the district policies regarding book challenges. I wanted to share some information with you, or I guess an opinion about book banning and how that might affect an author. This is a video from Dave Pilkey, who may be familiar to most of you as the author of Captain Underpants.
Hi, I'm Dave Pilkey, the creator of Captain Underpants. You might have heard that Captain Underpants was the #1 most complained about book in America in 2012 and 2013. I have to admit, the news was quite a shock to me. I wondered, how could people be so offended by a series that contains no profanity, no sex, no nudity, no drugs, no smoking, no alcohol, no guns, and no more violence than a children's superhero cartoon? The best answer I could give you is this: everybody doesn't always like the same things. A lot of people like Captain Underpants, and some people don't. Fortunately, as Americans, we live in a country where we don't all have to like the same thing. The freedom to choose for ourselves what we read and think about is a hard-won right for every American. So what should you do if you find yourself offended by a book? How can you show your concern without undermining the freedoms of everyone around you? It's easy. All you have to do is make a simple change. The next time you find yourself thinking,
I don't want children to read this book,
just make a simple change. One tiny adjective can make all the difference. The next time you start to think,
that book does not belong in the library,
just make a simple change. And if you ever find yourself thinking,
I should complain about that book,
just make a simple change. You see, by changing ourselves, we can show our concern while still allowing everyone else to experience the freedoms they deserve. So make a simple change and make the world a better place.
Now, I don't know about you, I'm not a huge Captain Underpants fan, but my son definitely loved the humor, and I know it's a very popular book with elementary students. But I think he makes some really great points. You know, I mean, if you don't like something, if you just make a little change, or it's a great opportunity for parents to discuss information or ideas with their children at home about why they may not care for a certain book or why they don't want their child to read a certain book. Another great example I found this summer was this book. Alan Gratz is normally a historical fiction writer that my son happens to love as well. And this is his newest book called Ban This Book. He's a popular author who decided to really take on this idea of banning books in his newest novel. And the basic premise is that if you ban any book, that it just opens the door for any other book to be banned for any particular reason. The basic summary is this, young female fourth grader discovers that from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basiley Frankweiler, her favorite book ever is suddenly gone from her school library. And the book is supposedly diversive because the children run away and they lie and they steal and they do all of these things that children should never do. This again was a book I loved as a child, and I would have been mortified as well if it had been removed. But I love the fact that in this book, this quiet little bookworm, mousy kind of girl finds her voice, and she makes a case for not only this book, but for any book, that if you can find something objectionable in this book, then it's possible to find something objectionable in every single book. And her friends come together to help her make this case before the school board. I have a couple of quotes for you from the book that I thought were really great. This is the first one. And they basically fill out forms for as many books as they can possibly fill out and come up with absurd ideas for all these different reasons why each of these books should be banned. And they take those stacks of book challenge forms to the school board and make this wonderful case. The second one is really, I think it speaks to what we want books to do. We want books to do all of these things. Scary books have a place in children's hearts and in their worlds. We want books to teach and entertain and show new things, help deal with emotions, whether they're sad or happy, or just be able to open children's minds to thinking in different new ways. I believe that books do make our world a better place, like Dave Pilkey said, and we encourage intellectual freedom and promote the right to read. And one of the things I would like to do is to participate in the Banned Books Week that happens annually. This year it's on September 23rd through the 29th. And I would like your input for some grade level appropriate ideas for promotion and possible activities that we could use here at our school. So I would like to return to our Padlet, and this is the copy of the handout that you have. But I'd like to go back to the Padlet and just kind of hear what you have to say about possible ways that we could incorporate a banned books week at the elementary level. Again, I know it's not as typical as maybe middle school or high school, but I think there are some things that we could do that would be grade level appropriate. So I'm going to take us back to there. Should I show you that? But let's go back to our Padlet here just for a moment. Any ideas or thoughts that we could use for celebrating or promoting Banned Books Week? I know it's kind of a touchy subject sometimes, especially at the elementary level, but I would like to do something that that would draw attention to this idea. And using the book, ban this book, I think it's for the upper elementary grades would be a great jumping off place, kind of a starting place. What other ideas do you have? Oh, yeah, I liked the video too, the Dave Pilkey video. I thought that was really, really great. What do you think about maybe using some of the books that are kind of surprising and just ask students what they, how they would feel about not being able to check out Brown Bear, what do you see? Or just drawing their attention to the fact that sometimes books are taken away for various reasons. Okay, sharing feelings about books, right? I think a lot of kids can relate to having a favorite book that they've checked out multiple times. Oh, yeah. I like the pictures, taking pictures of us reading old banned books. Do you think that elementary school children and parents would be amenable to Banned Books Week, or do you think it's too touchy of a subject? Right? Really highlighting what the academic benefits are, the ways that we use books. I agree. I do think it should be talked about. I mean, I know that it has to be done in a gentle kind of way. Displaying the books that were mentioned, and there are so many others. Mm-hmm.
You have about 1 minute.
Thank you. Okay, great ideas. So, I'd really like you to take a look at your handout when you have some time and maybe kind of keep it accessible for the off chance that you might need it to address a possible book challenge. It does have some links to information that can help you explain censorship or intellectual freedom and the steps that you would take in case there is a possible book challenge that comes up in the classroom or that you need to make me aware of. I would like to thank you for your time and for helping me protect students' rights and making the library a place for all students to feel safe and encouraged and supported in their learning and in their well-being.